Chapter 15, Excerpted and Adapted, of Lyddie by Katherine Paterson. Rachel. Lyddie wanted to tell Diana about her $50, but she decided to wait. She was so close to having as much money as she needed. When she saved up enough, she would surprise Diana by signing the petition. Then, only a week after Luke had visited, Lyddie had a second visitor who turned her life upside down. "A gentleman is here to see you," said Mrs. Bedloe's son, Tim, poking his head into her bedroom. Lyddie wrung the water out of the socks and underwear she was washing in a basin and went downstairs. She was sure it must be Charlie, grown tall. But it wasn't Charlie waiting in the corner of the dining room that Mrs. Bedloe called a parlor. It was a short man, very thin, with a weathered face and the homespun clothes of a hill farmer. "Don't you know your uncle, eh?" the man asked. At the same moment she recognized Uncle Judah, Aunt Clarissa's husband. She hadn't seen him since she was little. She tried to smile, but her heart was beating like a churning blade in her chest. What had happened to make him visit? "Your Aunt Clarissa thought you should be told that we've had to send your mama to the asylum in Brattleboro." "But that's for crazy folk," Lyddie gasped. Judah put on a face of hound dog sorrow and sighed deeply. "It were just too much care for poor Clarissa, delicate as she be." "Why didn't you ask me to take care of her? I've been responsible for her before. I can do it." He tilted his head. "You weren't there, eh?" "Where's Rachel? What have you done with my sister?" "Why," he said, "she's just fine. Right out front, in the wagon. I brung her to you." Lyddie went outside to the wagon and lifted Rachel down. Rachel was too light and trembling with cold in her shawl. "It's all right, Rachie. It's me, Lyddie." She hoped the child remembered her. She carried Rachel inside to where Judah still stood, clutching his sweat-stained hat. "It's your sister, Rachie," Judah boomed out with fake cheer. The girls in the parlor gasped. "Like Aunt Clarissa told you, eh? We brung you to Lyddie." "Well," Judah said, "I'll be off then, eh?" "I'm coming to fetch our mother soon as I can," said Lyddie. "As soon as I pay off the debt, I'll take her home and care for her myself." Judah turned at the door. "Back home to the farm? We be selling it. We got to have the money for the Brattleboro Asylum." "No!" Lyddie said, so sharply that the roomful of girls stared, and little Rachel twisted in her arms to look at her with alarm. Lyddie walked up to Judah and whispered fiercely, "No one can sell that land except my father." "He give permission." She was seized with a wild hope. Her father had written? When? She demanded. "Before he left. He had it wrote out and put his mark to it, in case there was a need to sell it, eh?" She wanted to scream at him, but she had already frightened Rachel. "You got no right to sell the farm," she growled through clenched teeth. "We got no choice," the man said stubbornly. "We be responsible." And he was gone. Lyddie ignored the other girls gaping at her and buried her face in Rachel's shawl. "Come on, Rachie. We got to go talk to Mrs. Bedloe." "It's Rachel, Mrs. Bedloe." Lyddie made her voice as gentle as she could. "My sister, Rachel." She could read the warning in Mrs. Bedloe's eyes. No men, no children, except for the keeper's own, in a corporation house. But surely the woman would have the heart. "I'm begging a bath for her. She's had a long, rough journey in an ox cart, and she's chilled right through, eh, Rachie?" It was only after they had both seen Rachel safely asleep in Lyddie's bed that Mrs. Bedloe said the words that Lyddie knew were on her mind. "It won't do, you know. She can't stay here. I'll get her a job. She can doff. You know she's not old enough or strong enough to be a doffer. Just till I can straighten things out, Lyddie pleaded. Please let her stay. I'll get it all set in just a few days, eh? Mrs. Bedloe sighed and made to shake her head. I'll pay, of course. Full board. And you see how small she is. You know she won't eat a full share. It wouldn't be more'n a fortnight. I give you my vow. I just got to write to my brother. Mrs. Bedloe looked doubtful, but she didn't say no. I thank you, Mrs. Bedloe. You'll not be sorry, I promise. She wrote Charlie that night after curfew in the flickering light of a forbidden stub of candle. Dear Brother Charles, I hope you are well. I am sorry to trouble you with sad news, but Uncle Judah come tonight to Lowell and brung Rachel to me. They have put our mother to the asylum at Brattleboro. Now they are thinking to sell the farm. You must go and stop them. You are the man of the family. Judah won't pay me no mind. They got to listen to you. I got more than $100 to the debt. Do not let them sell, Charlie. I beg you. I don't know what to do with Rachel. Children are not allowed in Corporation House. If I can, I will take her home, but I got to have a home to go to. It is up to you, Charlie. Please, I beg you, stop Uncle Judah. Your loving sister, Lydia Worthen. At the factory, Bridget was still having trouble handling her work, and Mr. Marsden asked Lyddie to warn her. She spoke to Bridget after the break. He says you'll have to speed up or he can't keep you on. The girl's eyes widened in fear, reminding Lyddie, oh, cuss it, of Rachel's silent face as the child sat crouched within herself in the corner of Mrs. Bedloe's kitchen. Oh, tarnation, she hollered in Bridget's ear. I'll help you. We'll do the 5 looms together for a few days, just till you get on better, eh? The girl smiled faintly, still frightened. When Lyddie got back to the boarding house, she asked Mrs. Bedloe, Did Rachel manage to eat anything? Did she manage to eat? She ate more than Tim, and he's a growing boy. But she never says a word, just shovels it in like there'll never be another plate of food this side of the grave. Lyddie looked at the housekeeper's angry face, then down at the top of Rachel's head. The child was trembling, like Oliver in the story, she thought. Oh, Rachie, I don't want to think of you as hungry. I'll pay you more, she promised Mrs. Bedloe. At bedtime, Lyddie thought that if she read aloud, as Betsy had read to her, it would help Rachel sleep. She opened Oliver Twist and commenced. Lyddie didn't notice when Rachel fell asleep. She was lost in the comfort of the familiar words. When the bell rang, she blew out the candle and lay in the darkness, feeling the presence of her sister's small body nearby. What could she do? Where could she turn for help? She couldn't keep Rachel here, and yet she, Lyddie, must live in a corporation house to keep her job. And without her job, how could she help her family at all? But how could she put Rachel in a home with strangers? She cursed her aunt and uncle. What could they have been thinking of to bring the child here? And yet, wasn't she better off here with Lyddie, who loved her, than with those two who must not have given her enough to eat? Poor little Rachel. Poor old Lyddie. She heaved herself over in bed. She had to sleep. In her uneasy sleep she saw the bear again, but suddenly, in the midst of his clumsy thrashing about, he threw off the pot and was transformed, leaping like a spring buck up into the loft where they were huddled, and she could not stare him down.